Rome, making the classic mistake, dropping like the beat on this mixtape. Overextended military machine, barbarians, but no barbarian king. Attila the Hun, always invading, tearing down the Roman nation. The western half will crumble, can't catch the past cause they finally fumble. No more government, leaving a void. Roman Catholic Church steps up to fill in. They don't know now, but eventually they become the villain. Nobles and serfs tied together, run from cities thinking villas are better. This is where feudalism begins, and it takes a long, long time for it to end.
The Middle Ages had a lot of fighting. They didn't spend their time thinking about uniting. There were fiefdoms ruled by warlords. They called it feudalism. There were more than landlords. People lived in a constant state of war. No one ever moved, religion at the core. Vassals traded their rights in the feudal contract. In exchange, the lord made sure they weren't attacked. In manorialism, they produced the things they needed. They fought hard. What happened? They succeeded. With warmer climates and good intentions came the growth of towns and agricultural inventions. A growing population meant new cities in the nation. In this time, there was a lot of trading, let their guard down, and then came the crusading. Christianity appealed to the upper and lower class. This meant the RCC had almost everyone at Mass. It gave people hope and brought a lot of order. This was enough to turn a skeptic to supporter. They were focusing on praying underneath the steeple, minding their own business when the plague killed all their people.
Renaissance caused by agricultural advances, full of arts, not all about knights and their lances. The Black Death, cold up nation, killing off half the population.
Dang.
Italy, a powerhouse of trade, stacking up gold and goods for days. Roman Catholic Church taking charge. Italy is where they are. Their power is overwhelming, causing new prosperity. Cities reducing the class disparity. City-states, they increase trade. Access to resources gets everybody paid. The plague gave more access to food, finally giving time for intellectual pursuits. In the end, the results were an important part in increasing trade, the middle class's power in art. The most important of all was the Gutenberg press, revolutionary, most important thing to invent. Carried the words of Machiavelli. He wrote how to be a dictator, building up governments and pushing them down. That's ought to leave a crater.
Wow.
The Reformation changed the way people thought, gave them a full redo. Fail after fail, the RCC never stopped. Failed crusades, Black Death, fall of Constantinople. Why is this guy even Pope? The Great Schism, King Francis killed the leader and elected his own. May as well be preaching off some soap. Monastic life full of sin, where does his holiness even begin? Indulgence, free passes to heaven, free love of God. What is the point of doing good and if I can just find myself a spot? Huss and Wycliffe chose to rebel. The church disagreed and said go to hell. Gutenberg press, the real MVP, spinning knowledge to people like a rotisserie. Luther followed the steps of Wycliffe, and Huss wrote the 95 Theses, changed more than a lot. Caused a schism, split Christianity in two different religions, Catholicism, Protestant in two different beliefs, gave kings another Christian option, gave some relief. John Calvin, French theologist, his power made another sect of Protestant. Those who follow Calvinism believe in predestination, where souls are chosen to God but to go to heaven. RCC dents in certain places. Spain, France, and Italy, they're off the races. Reformation like positive pollution. How the long-term effects broke the church's hold on the individual. Now what's next? Brings back the people's interpretation of the Bible. Who's to blame? Gutenberg's liable. Formation of Protestant religion, increasingly deep division, politically took power off the church and gave it to the Queen. Encourages people to give control. That's scary. Call it Halloween.
Europe had an addiction to spices, but Muslims drove up their prices. The Muslim Empire was blocking the trade route. Europe would find another way, there's no doubt. 3 G's of exploration, God, glory, gold. To be an explorer, you had to be bold. Portugal, France, and Spain, the 3 major players back then, claiming land for themselves, time and time again. Vasco da Gama, the Portuguese explorer, did more exploring than Mohomi Dora. He was the first European to reach India by sea. Hard trip for sure, no cup of tea. My boy Chris Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. He found the Americas, but Vespucci took all the credit. Anyway, it doesn't matter now, don't sweat it. Then there's the Conquistadors, sponsored by Spain. Cortez and Pizarro, pushing the Spanish up the food chain. On a mission to spread Christianity and their beliefs, they ended up causing populations to decrease. It sure seems like Europe liked to explore, but if it weren't for diamond theory, they wouldn't have made it offshore. These new routes led to triangle trade. Unless you're a slave, there's no need to be afraid. But real quick, this ain't the Middle Ages. People had no business being captured and in cages.
England is an island because where it's located. You know what that means? People are isolated. After the Black Death, only a couple of million survived. With England's high taxes, the nobles didn't thrive. The Magna Carta by my guy King John. Now this meant that divine right was gone. There was no chosen kings at the time. Private armies controlled the land and crime. The War of Roses was a time of disarray. If you're up against the 7th Henry, you better start to pray. Whenever there's a fight with the York in Lancaster, better watch your step, it's a definite disaster. Henry the Tudor merged the two houses. This family name would be taken by all the son's spouses. Speaking of Henry VIII, he didn't wait for a male heir. If a woman didn't produce, he might dissipate her and then there. First he married his sister-in-law, he had 6 children but 1 survived. England just lost their jaw. He had 4 more wives, only gained 2 lions, and his daughter Elizabeth rose. Elizabeth used Parliament, so she didn't cause an argument. Elizabeth didn't marry to her power was primary. Elizabeth combined Protestantism and RCC, together they had a baby. Charles the First dropping on this beat. Like father, like son, he didn't support Parliament, none. England didn't like this cause their rights fell into an abyss. On to William and Mary. They had to find a solution cause the War of Roses was scary. Constitutionalism was the answer. England wanted to be anti-cancer. That's it.
In the War of the 3 Henrys, Navarre came out on top, putting a stop to the nobility. He was known as Henry IV, first of the Bourbon dynasty. Henry didn't pay attention to the Scots, all he did was tolerate the Huguenots. He gave religious freedom with the Edict of Nantes, so people worship anyone. In French, Louis High Roller, big bank controller, forced the nobles to walk his plank. Big Louis believed in divine right. He thought that with God he had good sight. Turned into an absolute monarch. With whatever he wanted, he could just embark. Under his thumb, under his control. Live with him and you gotta pay the toll. Tuck him into bed, cook him a 7-course meal. Rent is due, it's not a very good deal. His crib was lavish, walls lined with gold, symbol of French opulence, and the king's goal showed his absolute power, ripped up the economy, 300 billion in the make no sense like astronomy. My place is as big as the Eiffel Tower, I make $1 million every single hour. Palace of Versailles, my home made of gold, live for 30 years and it never gets old. Hall a mere 100-yard reflection. My life is a dream, it's not Inception. His people were suffering, there was no recovering. His economy was shit, his people would not permit. The symmetry of his garden was crazy, but the lack of money showed that he was lazy. Ripping up this track just like Jay-Z, popping pills like mother loving Swayze. Sun is at the center of the solar system. The scientific method proved the ecosystem. According to the church, this was ballistic, but this is what made the world less simplistic. Philosophy, a way of the time. Oh, what an appalling crime. John Locke on the track, trying to put England back on track. He fought for rights, which was real tight. Father of liberation was his title. All he was doing is back in the Bible. Minus here, out here, split in the government. Europe finally had good judgment. Democracy was his goal. First he needed to gain control. Legislative, making these laws. Judicial, not having no flaws. Executive, to carry out these bars. Hobbes was harsh, nasty, and hateful. He supported the monarchy, which was real wasteful. He was an atheist, no one cared, yet somehow he died real scared.